Gear this week, Lotus's new sports car. Is this the best front-wheel drive car yet? Power from the sun. Can it replace petrol and stave off the greenhouse effect? And a new form of motorcycle sport, combining motocross and road racing. Hello and welcome to this week's Top Gear. We're in Norfolk, the home of Lotus. In fact, this lovely place is the home of Team Lotus, the Formula One racing team. Now, the theme of this week's programme is all about engineering and sporting innovation, represented in its day, in good measure indeed, by this delightful old Lotus Elan. Delightful or not, you couldn't actually make and sell this car these days because it wouldn't meet so many of today's safety regulations. In fact, try and do the same thing today, and it turns out looking like this. The Mazda MX-5, similar layout, but longer, wider and higher than the old Elan, weighs fully 40% more for the same power. I drove this car in California last year for Top Gear. It will undoubtedly sell like hotcakes. But in attacking the same market, Lotus were concerned not so much to revive an old car as to design a completely new one, which is why their new Elan looks so completely different. Chris Goffey has been putting it to the test.
Ever since the original Elan ceased production in 1974, Lotus executives have been talking about its return. Plans originally conceived were for a rear-wheel drive car powered by a Toyota engine, since Toyota then had a quarter share in the company. However, when GM took control in 1986, the Elan project was revised yet again to its current form, with front-wheel drive, a first for the company. The decision was taken with some trepidation, since the Lotus name was synonymous with the ultimate in balance and handling, and that's something that's difficult to achieve with power going through the front wheels. However, in their inimitable way, Lotus seemed to have achieved just that in this design. But the world has moved on from the fragile and often unreliable Lotus sports cars of the past. Can this new design deliver the standards of quality and durability we've come to demand? Driving an open-top car in this weather demands certain precautions. Under the bonnet of the new Elan is an Isuzu engine. Now, that's not a familiar name to many people in this country, but Isuzu is a General Motors subsidiary in Japan. And of course, when General Motors acquired Lotus, they didn't want the original Toyota engine that was planned for this car. Lotus has done a lot of work with Isuzu on it. It's a 16-valve twin-overhead cam turbocharged unit, and thanks to the Lotus work, it now produces 165 brake horsepower. Now, the old Elan always had pop-up headlamps that were very distinctive, and the new Elan is no exception, but let me show you how they work. Instead of a simple swivel, there's a double action. It seems to make rather a lot of noise, but Lotus say that the production versions should be better. Sports cars aren't usually noted for their luggage carrying capacity, but at least the new Elan does have a boot. Although it's a very narrow aperture, it's quite deep. It's more suited to squashy bags than suitcases. Underneath the boot floor, a space-saver tyre. And of course, in the old Elan, there was always some space behind the rear seats for stowing things. In this car, that space has gone. Why? Because the space is utilised for the very neat hood arrangement. Just lift the flap, the whole hood comes out, drop it, and the rear of the hood hinges down automatically and seals there. And the whole thing's in place with just two catches on the screen rail. Once in place, the hood doesn't flap, vibrate or balloon at speed. It keeps the car warm and snug, and it also means that when cruising at 70, it's quiet. Something that's essential if you choose to test in Norfolk in February is weatherproofing, and the Lotus didn't leak on the move. This car did let water into a footwell overnight though. Production cars won't, they say. The steering is very, very good on this car. It's a power steering system, but you wouldn't know it when you're on the move. It feels quite heavy, and that means you can place the car very accurately. You don't steer it round bends, you almost lean it round. But at parking speeds, despite all the weight on the front wheels and the front wheel drive, it's very easy to manoeuvre. With its sloping nose and low seats, it's difficult to judge the length for tight parking, but visibility is good even with the hood up. Brakes felt rather dead and the pedal travel too long. Lotus have now changed the servo, but inexplicably there's still no ABS offered. Even on wet roads, the grip's excellent. No excessive wheel spin and beautifully poised for swift, safe progress. Driving position's good and the seats give excellent support, but I didn't like the red lettering on the instruments. It's well equipped though, good stereo, power windows and mirrors. One thing that does irritate me, I find this console too high, and I hit my elbow on it, and that means I can't quite get into second gear as easily as I would like. The gear lever is in exactly the right place for fast changes, it's just this is too high for me. The Elan feels solid and well built. There are no shakes or rattles and it's eminently practical, a delight to drive. Lotus claim to have defeated the problems of front-wheel drive with their patented front suspension. So to test ultimate performance, we return to their test track. At speed, the Elan proved to hang on well without excessive understeer. And despite the noise from those special Michelin tyres, the grip was exceptional. Although there's some body roll, it's entirely controllable right up to the limit. And does it go 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds and on to a maximum of 137 miles an hour. And that's a function of the slippery shape. With the hood in place, the drag factor is 0.34, and that's good for a convertible with big fat tyres. The new Lotus Elan has been 14 years in gestation, but the wait's been worth it because the result, in my opinion, is absolutely superb. If you want a new car, you'll have to wait until the middle of next year for delivery because they've already pre-sold 4,000 of them. But I think it's the best fun on four wheels I've had for a very long time. So, overall, the Lotus Elan scores highly on its handling and performance. It's very well built and surprisingly refined. Against it, really only details. Poor instrument clarity and that intrusive armrest. You can't see the clock in its position behind the steering wheel, and I thought the door catch is rather fiddly for those who value their fingernails. But with that level of demand, it's another Lotus classic.
Well, with that sort of demand, the new Elan will clearly be highly sought after for a long time, but it will also, no doubt, attract a great deal of attention from the wrong kind of driver. I mean, the joyrider. Now, security, of course, has always been a major problem with open-top cars, but these days, fully 25% of all recorded crime involves vehicles, and it seems that no manufacturer is really taking security serious enough. As of this year, though, Ford have taken a major step forward. Now, all but the base model Sierra gets a factory-fitted alarm that can only be disarmed with this key. So if an intruder tries to open the boot or the bonnet, steal the radio, bypass the ignition system, even if he tries to start the car with this key without first having unlocked the doors, then the alarm goes off. Well, fitting a sophisticated alarm like this to a high-volume car is clearly a step in the right direction. But what about the retrofit market? There are 23 million cars out there already, obviously a major opportunity. Tom Boswell has been looking at the latest developments.
That's the thief's favourite way of breaking into your car. Indeed, of the 1.5 million cars broken into or stolen each year, nearly half, some 46%, are entered in that way. Now, that window was just ordinary toughened glass, like in yours and my cars. But if the industry would accept laminated glass in the side windows, just like is obligatory now on the windscreen, that's to say 2 sheets of glass sandwiched together with a bit of plastic in between, then it would be much, much more difficult for the thief. Indeed, this is the sort of difficulty he might experience. This isn't nearly so easy. No matter how many of these little marks I put in, the window's not going to shatter. Obviously going to have to put much more effort into this. There's just no way. I'm going to break into that car quickly, and by now, of course, the police would be coming. And it would only add about £80 to the price of the vehicle. But there are those who say there is a question of safety. Some say that this new glass could trap you in an accident. for the windows do remain intact even after quite a severe crash. But surely, intact windows are safer, and the chances of all the doors and windows becoming jammed at once are absolutely minimal. Around 400,000 vehicles were stolen last year, and in a third of the cases the thief gained entry to the vehicle via the lock. Now, Vauxhalls do have a deadlocking system, which means that even if you break a window, you still can't open the door from the inside. Fords have a special lock which is more difficult to pick, yet no manufacturer yet makes a lock which is good enough. The industry has been set a challenge. BS AU 209 states that a lock should withstand attack for at least 4 minutes. We look forward to seeing when the industry can meet that challenge. So if you want to protect your car with an alarm system, there's some very interesting new products on the market this spring. First of all, if you move a lot from car to car or don't want to install a system permanently, the Sonix unit could be the answer. It very simply clips onto the perimeter of the steering wheel with a simple turn of the key. There's 2 ultrasonic sensors which detect motion within the car and sensitivity and entry delay adjustments. There's a siren in the bottom of the case, and the batteries inside give you about 5 hours use, but to keep the battery topped up, a lead is provided which works it from the car battery unit itself. The Sonix alarm costs £80. One of the bugbears of any alarm system must be false alarms, and the old pendulum alarms, for instance, were very easily set off by a passing bit of traffic or a gust of wind. The alarm in this car is obviously not susceptible to that, but if I'm a little bit more aggressive, the alarm is instantly set off. Now, the secret to that differentiation is in the little control box here in the boot. The box is securely mounted to the floor pan of the car so that the vibration sensor within it can pick up signals from anywhere around the car. That's connected to a little microprocessor unit which sorts out the hostile or attack signals from the everyday ones. If you want additional protection, you can have an extra sensor mounted elsewhere in the car, and that has its own individual sensitivity control. The cost of this SBN system is between £200 and £300 fitted. It's not a DIY system. Expensive? Well, perhaps, but it does give protection right round the car, even from underneath.
Warning, you are too close to the vehicle. Step back. Step back, or the alarm will sound. Thank you.
That stopped me in my tracks before I even got near the car. So let's get inside and see how it works.
Alarm.
My approach to the car was detected by a microwave system. You can see the aerial and control unit just behind this panel in the roof. And of course the sensitivity can be turned down so that it just covers the area within the car itself. But what makes the MOS 750 system unique is this versatile control system. First of all, the system allows you to isolate different sections. For instance, you might want to switch off the microwave system if you're going to leave an animal in the car, or you might want to disconnect one of the door switches if it's gone faulty, and yet the rest of the system is still able to be used in the normal way. Next, if the car is tampered with while you're away, when you get back, the liquid crystal display will give you an indication of where that tampering took place, whether it was the boot or the bonnet or one of the doors. Lastly, one rather nice feature, if you're attacked while you're in the car, there is a panic button. And the tone of the siren can be altered to 15 different sounds to personalise your car. This system costs £250 plus fitting, but all the systems give invaluable protection, so isn't it high time the insurance companies gave you a discount, just as they already do in America? Oh, and by the way, if I forget to arm the system, it does it for itself.
Lotus here in Norfolk is not just a car manufacturer. They put up a name for technical excellence, so they do a lot of design consultancy for other companies. As you would expect, that expertise is built into their own products. This engine, for example, that goes into the current Esprit has a very high power output for a relatively small unit, and yet manages to meet all the current emission control regulations, largely through the help of this three-way catalytic converter. Compulsory, of course, in the States. This is one of the few cars to carry a converter in this country as well. The converter will eliminate most of the air pollution and the acid rain caused by carbon monoxide, unburnt hydrocarbons and nitrogen oxides, But it doesn't help with the other main pollutant, carbon dioxide, and that's a major greenhouse gas contributing towards global warming. In fact, by abandoning lead in fuels and using a catalytic converter, we accept a fuel consumption penalty that can be as great as 15%. So, by helping the local difficulties of smog and acid rain, we make worse a global problem of heating up the planet. So, what can be done about it? Well, during this spring series, we want to look at various possible ways of improving the situation. There are, of course, political and social strategies. We're going to concentrate on the technological ones. Can the engineers provide a complete technical fix, or will the best they can do mean only a partial reduction in carbon dioxide pollution, like, for example, using petrol more efficiently or turning to more economical fuels like diesel? But let's go back to the basic problem. Why do cars churn out carbon dioxide anyway? That's because petrol, like most of our fuels, is a fossil fuel based on compounds of carbon. So burn petrol, which is principally hexane, you get carbon dioxide and water. The carbon will always end up as carbon dioxide. So the only ultimate solution is to dispense with fossil fuels altogether, but it's a tremendous list. Coal, oil, natural gas, propane, butane, LPG, CNG, methanol, the lot. Of course, all fossil fuels are really just solar energy accumulated millions of years ago and conveniently stored in the ground for us to use now. It's the unique process of photosynthesis in green plants that captures the solar energy, stores it as carbon compounds, incidentally using up some atmospheric carbon dioxide in the process. So why not short-circuit the photosynthesis and storage phases and convert current solar energy directly into power for vehicles? Well, it's not as fanciful as it sounds. In fact, Chris Goff has been to Switzerland, where they're doing it now.
Now, the basic device that captures the energy of the sun and transforms it into electrical energy is the solar cell. We've seen solar cells in calculators and small electrical devices for some time now, and very successful they are. But the output of each solar cell is very low. Low or not, GM demonstrated with their Sunracer that you can use direct sunlight to power a car, but it was hardly a practical runabout. Now, here in Switzerland, there's several companies building electric cars. This is the Frides Solar. Now, at first, they put solar panels actually on the car, on the bonnet and on the roof. But the solar panels are expensive and the power output, again, is very low. When you realise in bright sunshine, all 4 of these panels can only contribute 80 watts, and this little car needs 4,700 watts to drive it along. So all the panels do is give a very low trickle charge during the day to the battery power that essentially makes the car go. The Swiss now accept it's more practical to put the solar panels on buildings and plug in the batteries in the car once it's parked. That way, on your return after work or shopping, the car's ready for the trip home. On the move, it's much like any other battery car, simple to drive but slow and noisy and with a range of only 50 miles, not much for an outlay of almost £8,000. Well, we've been driving for about 15 kilometres now, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm fed up with this little electric car. It simply isn't a practical form of everyday transport.
So there is no doubt that direct solar power is not going to be a universal replacement for petrol, not for a very long time anyway. But it can help in some places. There are, if you like, niche markets for it. That's a very important concept when trying to solve these problems. There's no single answer, no universal panacea. We're going to have to adopt a dozen or more different solutions. Now, the solar car use batteries, and of course electric vehicles like this G-Van have been around for donkey's years, so can they provide a clean solution? Well, it depends really on where you draw the boundary. The electric vehicle itself can be absolutely clean, but generating the electricity it uses can be very dirty indeed. For example, the solar car is clean, and batteries charged from solar cells is also a clean way of getting the power. But if you plug this chloride G-Van into the British main supply, the electricity it's using is generated largely by the burning of fossil fuels, so very dirty indeed. Only about 20% of our electricity comes from nuclear sources. So although in theory you can get a reduction in carbon dioxide pollution by using electric vehicles, in practice, if you take the vehicle plus the energy supply system, you're not much better off. If you take the lead-acid battery that powers this vehicle, it's an old technology and one coming very much to the end of its development. You have to carry around a ton of these batteries in order to get a 1-ton payload and a range of about 50 miles. And although General Motors, for example, got a great deal of publicity when they showed their electric impact vehicle at Geneva, it has a very low coefficient of drag, and good acceleration. But the technology, the battery technology, is the same. Therefore, perhaps it shouldn't be taken too seriously. What will change things is when these sodium-sulphur batteries come into production, and Chlorine have a pilot plant opening in Manchester in the summer. They're much lighter, of course, built into monoblocks like this, which contain 120 of them. In this vehicle, they would almost double the payload and more than double the range. Now, that may not be very impressive for the average family car. It wouldn't meet all our needs, but they could fill another market niche for some delivery vehicles, extending, if you like, the milk float principle. There's another useful contribution that these batteries could make. Forget carbon dioxide. When the problem is localized toxic emissions, as in Los Angeles, for example, petrol vehicles may be banned completely. And already in Switzerland, there are laws allowing vehicles, petrol vehicles, to be banned from the centre of towns on days when pollution is bad. So what about a dual vehicle with a battery for those bad days in town and a conventional engine for longer journeys? Well, as we saw last week, Audi Volkswagen had two such hybrids at this year's Geneva show. The Audi Duo drives all four wheels, but with two separate systems. A conventional petrol engine at the front, and batteries and electric motor at the back, powering the rear wheels. The system in this diesel Golf is rather more sophisticated. The conventional clutch is replaced by a compact electric motor, so that either diesel or electric, or indeed both power sources, can be used according to load or emission requirements. On longer journeys, for example, you use the diesel engine. In towns, you can switch to the batteries. And when there are hills to climb or you need acceleration, both can make a contribution. So a very neat and effective solution. Well, there's no doubt that the redesign of cars to reduce pollution is going to be a dominant theme of the 90s. Next week, I'll be looking at another alternative to fossil fuels. Now to motorsport, not the four-wheel variety, which Lotus have been so successful. This time it's motorcycling. And last November, Becky Adam went to Liddon Hill to view the latest idea for fun on two wheels.
Imagine a combination of road racing and scrambling, a kind of two-wheeled rallycross. Logically, it should be an absolute disaster, but it's attracting some of the best riders in the world. It's called Supermoto, and everyone agrees it's great fun, and it certainly produces some spectacular racing.
Supermoto started in California about 10 years ago as an end-of-season TV special. It was intended to produce a Superbiker of the Year from road racing, speedway and motocross. The French quickly adopted the idea for their Supermotard series, and last year Bernard Conch of Euro Racing tried to sell it to the Brits. For the international event at Liddon, he assembled a wealth of talented riders from the US and Europe. Early on, American motocrosser Billy Lyles proved the quickest of the solos.
I really like it a lot. It's only the second time I've ever been superbike racing, and it's quite a new experience for me. It's a little bit different on the asphalt, a lot higher speed than I'm used to, but I like it a lot.
Facing foreign competition for the first time was Wayne Lamb, the eventual winner of the British Series.
It's quite good, they're quite fast, but I think we can still keep with them. If the race were a bit shorter, we could win, but we fall off trying.
And what actual skills do you need?
You've got to be able to slide the bike. It's basically motocross skills. Plus, you've got to be able to go fast on the tarmac like a road racer, really. It's an all-rounder.
To see what it's really like out there, we persuaded former British four-stroke motocross champion Vic Allen to take us round the circuit on his new PBH.
So right up through the gearbox. Make for the outside, serve tyres. Don't get much grip on this type of going. Like there just now, front wheel really went away. Find that very, very difficult to cope with in these conditions. Drift a little bit to the outside. Then under the tarmac now. Slowest corner on the tarmac, Adam. I want to take this and watch it a little bit, because this is a problem. When you lay it too far over on the tar, with the tires clinging from the mud, it makes it very, very difficult. Come down here. I want to try and make for the inside, I think, on this like bit here. Now drift a little bit wide. That's a very slippy bit there, because it's still in the shade. outside this time. See if it's any better. Very slippy. Very, very slippy indeed. I'm going to definitely have to keep to the outside of the track during the racing because I just get no grip with the front wheel. Very dangerous indeed. Now it's drying out. It's much better now.
The biggest problem for a motocross rider is the roles are reversed. Normally when you get on the road with a motocross bike it's very, very difficult. But here of course we're using road tyres and it's on the rough very, very difficult unless you've got the right tyre.
To get better grip on those deceptively loose surfaces, the wet weather road racing tyres have extra grooves cut in them, and once on the right rubber, Vic found the performance of his bike transformed. Paul Blezard told me what else he's done to turn a scrambler into a supermoto machine.
Well, you've got the tyres, the wheels, the brakes and the suspension. You use smaller diameter, fatter tyres, fatter wheels with fatter tyres on them. They're using especially road race tyres, which a hard compound wet tyre. You use higher gearing to go faster because you're going much faster than in motocross. And the brakes are very important because you need to be braking as hard as you possibly can on the tarmac.
So is it very expensive?
It's not, no. You could buy, my bike only costs about £600, about £50 or £100 to modify cheaply. If you want to go the whole hog and put the really trick suspension and wide rims and really good brakes on it, you could still build a very competitive bike for about £1,200.
The racing was fast and tight, but so far the crowds have stayed away. So will Supermoto get us Brits out of our armchairs?
I think it has a tremendous future because we have been sort of struggling throughout the year to try and establish the sport, and I think that this sort of final for the season definitely have established the sport as one of the major branches for motorcycling now. So it's really a sport for all branches of the motorcycling field.
Over the weekend, Billy Lyles maintained his form to run out winner of the Ultimate Challenge, already a convert to Supermoto.
I like it a lot, and whenever they have the races, if it's possible, I want to try to make them.
Do you think it's got a good future then?
I think so. The racing seems to be pretty close with a lot of the riders and on different tracks and everything, so I think it's got a good future, especially with the TV coverage.
But you don't have to be a champion to enjoy the mixture of speed on the tarmac and sliding on the loose.
It's fantastic. It's the most exciting thing I've ever done. It really is unbelievable. It's very difficult, very skillful, but great fun to do, even if you're not very good.
Becky Adam there reporting on a successful Supermoto meeting. Successful, that is, apart from the size of the crowd. It does look as if the entire 1990 season could be cancelled unless it attracts a wider following. Now, if rallying is more to your taste, don't forget your chance of driving a Nova like this. This year's Lombard RAC Rally depends upon your getting your Radio Times Rally Quest coupon in by Thursday, April the 5th. So if you're watching the repeat, I'm afraid that deadline is already passed. The coupons in the current issue of Radio Times, there's a multiple choice quiz to answer and return. You can forget question 3 because of a printer's error. All the answers are wrong, so we shall be ignoring that question, making our selection. The top 20 go on to the driving tests on the April the 30th at Donington, and we shall be announcing the winner in this programme 4 weeks from now. So if you're entering, the best of luck. Well, that's all for this week. Next week we're at Jaguar to look at their heritage and their prospects under Ford. But without Sir John Egan, of course, can they be as successful as Lotus are being in the GM empire? We also celebrate the 50th anniversary of the 750 Club. So see you then. Till then, drive safely. Bye.